name is Gabrielle Lima. I'm 16 years old and I've been studying at Fisk since the beginning of 2019. This here is my final focus presentation, and the theme that was chosen by me to talk about was the origin of English, because when teacher said at class that we'd talk about inventions that changed the world, I could not thought about anything else but the invention of English, the invention of the most important language worldwide. Because we all know the importance of English. We all know how important English is for us today. But what just a few of us know, it's about the origin of English. It's about its flourishment. It's about how, when, and where it started to be consolidated. So we are going to talk about it now. Here we have a timeline that divides the history of English into 6 periods, but how I have just only 20 minutes to talk about this, I'm going to talk about the 3 mainly periods, which is the Old English, the Middle English, and we are going to talk about early modern English and late modern English as only one. We are going to talk about modern English. So, Old English, Middle English, and modern English. The first period we are going to talk about is the Old English that dates back from the 5th century after Christ, and it started to be consolidated on the region of Britain. Many centuries before, Britain had been conquered by Rome, but on the 5th century, Rome started to go through lots of problems, so the Roman legions withdrew the Britain, leaving the inhabitants without any security. And how they were without any security, they could be invaded by some enemy tribe at any moment. So they decided to call up help, and they called upon the Germanic tribe. They called upon Germanic people, and the Germanic people answered them and sent three people to help them. They sent the Jutes, the Anglos, and the Saxons to help them. So Germanic people invaded Britain and started living there. And how they were part of Germanic tribes, they lived very, very close, so they had a very similar culture and a very similar language. Were not the same language, but was very similar. So they could understand each other, but during the years they were living together, these languages, the language of the Jews, the Anglos, and the Saxons, mixed and turned down in just one language, what we call today Old English, but we also called it Anglo-Saxon English. And why does not have the name of the Jutes in this name, Anglo-Saxon English? Because how you can see here in this map, the territory of the Jutes, that Jutes were living in Britain, it's represented by the yellow color here in the map, on the left side here in the map, and it's just a little bit of the territory. So the influences that the Jutes had under the language was very, very little. So Jutes are not in the name of the language, but they had influence too, okay? So the language, the Old English or the Anglo-Saxon language, was the first period of English's history. Here we have a script in Old English, and how you can see, it's very, very different from English we use today, from English we speak today. I even don't know if we can say that is the same language. It's very, very different. Even for a native speaker, English would be very, very hard for understand something. But even though it's very different, we have here in this script some similar words to modern English that we speak today. And some examples of the similar words are was, what, after, and father. The words located on the right side of this screen is the word in Old English. And the only big difference that you can notice right here is the presence of this different letter that we don't have anymore on the alphabet today, which is called ash. The pronounce of this different letter right here is ash. And it's the only big difference that you can notice between the words from ancient English and the words from English that we currently use, okay? The second period of English's history is the Middle English that dates back from 1066 after Christ with the Norman Conquest. Norman Conquest was a conquest for the Normandy people, the Norman people that lived in Normandy. Normandy was a northern part of France, and these conquests were led by William the Conqueror. William was the Duke of Normandy, And he received this name, this title, the Conqueror, because he, in his time, conquered a lot of locations, including the Britain. So French people invaded Britain and started living there. And of course, they brought their language with them. They brought their language and started living there. And how French, at that moment, was the language of the people who conquered the location, French started to be considered as a most important language, as a language more important than English. So, at that moment, French was considered the language of the higher classes, the language of the rich people, while English was considered the language of the poor. But some things occurred that changed this history. Some things occurred that turned English again into an important English. But some things occurred that turned this history upside down. Some things occurred that turned English again in an important language. One of these things were the land lost that occurred during the government of King John of Britain, okay? So British people lost some land, lost some possessions in France. So the relationship between France and Britain was not so strong anymore. And other facts occurred that we are going to see right now. The Black Death, that lasted less than 10 years and killed 25 million people, about 25 million people in Europe, caused a huge famine there in Europe because it caused a huge decrease of the agricultural production. So, after this, we have hunger all over Europe. And we needed to do something. The people needed to do something as soon as they could. So they needed to produce food as faster as they could. And this caused exploration of the workers. They had none right already, and they started to be explored, very explored, and they were treated like they were nothing. So, thanks to the huge exploration, the workers started some revolts. And these revolts are called today the peasant revolts, the revolts of the work class. And this peasant revolt is also called as Wat Tyler's rebellions. Wat Tyler was the leader of the first rebellion that occurred in Europe in 1381. And thanks to these revolts, the workers had received some rights. They had received just a few of rights, but just a few. It's very important for those that had nothing. So they started to be considered a little bit more important, so consequently, their languages started to be a little bit more important too. The third and most important event that occurred was the 100 Years' War that actually lasted 116 years. And this war caused the loss of all British possessions in France. So there were no relationship anymore between France and Britain. So French was not so important anymore. Actually, French was not important anymore in the Britain territory. How we have already seen on the Old English period, here in the Middle English we have the same thing. It's very, very different from the English we use today, but also has some similar words like fall, better, courage, and not. And how you can notice here, that letter that is very different that I said, the ash that does not exist anymore in the alphabet, are not present here, because here in the Middle English, this letter does not exist any longer. So one of the goals of Roman Catholic Church going to Europe was restore the faith of the people, because they have lost the faith because of the Black Death. They were like, oh my God, where is God that let this happen? So the language which was talked by Roman Catholic Church was the Latin. So at this moment, Latin was considered the language of the higher classes, the language of the educated people. So when they brought their language to Europe, they brought their language to Britain, this language started to spread around Britain. And we had this mix of Latin and the English that we had before, the Middle English, which was a mix of that three languages, and France started to suffer some influences from Latin too. So we have here the first book written in modern English. Modern English is the English with Latin influences. And this here is the first book written in modern English, which was written by Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton wrote this book, and because of this book, English started to be considered as the language of the educated people. Was not Latin anymore at this moment, was English. English was considered as the language of educated people. Isaac Newton has also created some words like velocity, mass, and gravity. And I even cannot imagine us living without these words, these concepts nowadays. So here in this moment of the modern English, we had a huge development of the importance of English. Here, English became the language of educated people and started to spread around the world. But the most important spread that English had occurred during the navigations. Because you can ask, how did English spread around the world? Because today, English is spoken in 83 countries. So how did English spread worldwide? And the answer is the navigations. During the time of the navigations, British Empire had conquered a lot of places, a lot of locations, including the North America. They did not conquer all over the North America, but they conquered a location that include United States and Canada. But it's important to say that Canada were not all conquered by British Empire. They were also conquered, a part of this, were also conquered by France. And it's because of this that today we have two official languages in Canada. We have English on the part that were conquered by British Empire, and we had French as official language too, on the part that were conquered by France. And how did English become so important? The answer is because of the First World War. Because United States during the First World War had a great performance. So since the First World War, English is considered as the most important language that we have today. English is the universal language. English is the universal way of communication. Today, English is an official language in 83 countries and is widely spoken in 55 countries. Anywhere you go, anywhere in the world, if you know English, you can communicate. If you know English, you will be able to communicate. You will find someone that also speaks English and you will be able to communicate with this person. Okay? So here we have some examples of some influences in our childhood. Right in the center, we have the heroes of Marvel. On one side, we have Mickey Mouse from Disney, and on the other side, we have the Princess Anna, also from Disney. And here we have some influences from brands in our daily life, brands that are present in Brazil. Okay, it's important to say that this influence that I'm talking about, it's influences that are present in the daily life of the Brazilian people, okay? It's common in Brazil. About the other countries, I don't know. Here we have influence from brand. We have McDonald's, we have Victoria's Secrets, Nike, and Apple. And it's important to say, I think it's really important to say that McDonald's right here, we don't pronounce McDonald's here in Brazil. If you ask something, if he or she does know where there is a McDonald's, probably he or she will not answer it to you, because here we say McDonald's. So here in Brazil, we say the things a little bit different from the correct. Here we have some influences from English language in the Portuguese language, words that are very common in our daily life, but I'm going to focus on only one of them. I'm going to focus on notebook, because in addition of having a different pronunciation, notebook has also a different meaning. Here in Brazil, notebooks means a computer, means a laptop, while in the countries that has English as first language, notebooks means a caderno, means a diary, a diário. So these other words are other examples that are very present in our daily life. So how could you see, even here in Brazil, English are very present, so it's very, very important for us to know English. This was my final focus presentation. I am Gabrielle Lima, I'm 16 years old, and there's only 2 years and a half that I've been studying at Fisk. Thank you to my family, and thank you to my teacher especially, and this was my final presentation.